You're not burnt out. It's just that your soul is starving. I saw a statistic, I think a few months ago, because I've mentioned it a few times, and it was the average amount of work that each generation claims that they're burnt out on. So for example, full-time work in Australia, where I'm at, is 38. Obviously, if you're working more than that, it's going to be easy to get burnt out because you're feeling overworked and tired. And it was very, very interesting seeing how the different generations, like, from 50 years ago, from 30 years ago, from 10 years ago, how they each claimed the amount of work they were getting burnt out at was different. And the most interesting part of that study that I saw was the amount of work that people our age claimed that they were becoming burnt out at, which was, take a guess what it was actually before I say it. Full-time work is 38, unless you live in like China or something, in which case it's probably like 100 hours a week. But take a guess how many hours a week people our age were claiming they were burnt out after. They physically couldn't do more, they were exhausted. It was 24 hours of work, and they were cooked. They couldn't do any more. And that made me think, why is it so low? Why is there such a huge drop-off? Why is it ridiculously low, the amount of work people our age can do compared to other people? And I started to realize, maybe just because they're having the symptoms of burnout, maybe it's not actually burnout that they're suffering from. Maybe it's something else that has similar symptoms, but a very, very different cause. And I did a little bit of digging around, and I think I've found the answer. And if you're watching this video as someone who is maybe not even that busy, maybe your week, if you actually look at it, isn't that busy, you're not even working full time, and there really isn't a reason for you to be that tired, but you do feel constantly exhausted. You do find yourself, turning to scrolling, staying up late at night, all these other things, and they just drain your energy. You feel as if you're, very, very overworked, even though other people will point out that you're actually, you're not working as much as you could be. You're not doing all these other things. You're not managing all these other tasks. If you're one of those people, especially if you're around my age, anywhere between 15 and 30 to be honest, I think I've found the reason why a lot of us feel burnt out even when we're not. And it's not because our bodies are broken, it's actually because our souls are starving. It's actually because of something that isn't burnout at all. It's because we don't have any goals. It's because we're not living purposeful lives. It's because we're not being authentic to ourselves. And as such, when you don't have anything you're working towards, when you have absolutely nothing in the future, nothing to look forward to, you have no hope at all, it's very, very easy to just be in a constant state of exhaustion and bad mood. And I freaking hate when people walk past my house when I'm filming. It just makes me want to go and fight them. That's probably not a good, I shouldn't have said that. That's going to have to get edited out of the video. But yeah, that is the reason, I think, why so many people are just feel burnt out. They feel exhausted. They don't want to go to the gym before or after work. They don't want to come home and actually work on something productive. Maybe they have an ambition to write a book, for example, as I've written one right now. I've actually got it linked in the description below if you want to check it out. Maybe they have the ambition to do that, but they actually do nothing towards it. And it's not because they're burnt out. It's not because they're overworked. It's just because they've done absolutely nothing for such a long period of time that they have no hope for the future, and their self-esteem is cooked, their growth, they have a fixed mindset, and just, it just goes downhill from there. Effectively, their soul is broken. That's why they feel burnt out and they have the exact same symptoms. So what is the solution of this if you're watching until this point? It's a kind of an interesting question because it's, it's a way of thinking that I haven't really thought about this problem before. But I think if you're feeling burnt out when you're objectively not working that much, I think the solution is to actually adopt something that I talked about in a previous video recently, which is the contract mentality. So what you need to understand if you're someone who's feeling burnt out is that in every single day, with every single decision that you make, I need to stop hitting the table. People are going to think I'm like, there's an earthquake going on or something. It's just me hitting the table, don't worry. But what you need to understand is with every single decision that you make, you're actually signing a contract with your future self. It doesn't matter what the decision is. The decision could be something productive like reading or exercising or going to bed, at an appropriate hour, not at 3 a.m. in the morning. Or it could be, something that's bad for you. It could be something that's dangerous. It could be, anything from the most mundane eating junk food to the most serious, like, gambling a shit ton of money away. With every decision you make, you are signing a contract with your future self. And what most people are doing without realizing is they're signing a contract for their future self that is effectively bad. They're making their future self's life worse. For example, when you stay up until 3 a.m. playing video games or scrolling or anything like that, your end of the contract that you're signing is, this is kind of, you know, it's not even that fun. It's just high dopamine. It's addictive. The end of the contract your future self is signing is now they're sleep deprived, now they're more addicted to video games, and you've just ruined the next day probably because they've stayed up until 3 a.m. And when that compounds, when you do that over years and years and years of signing bad contracts with your future self, what that leads to is the point of this video, which is your soul is starving. You've done nothing to improve your life. You have no goals you're working towards. You don't believe in yourself when you have low self-esteem. So what you need to do is just take the first step. Sign one good contract with your future self. Do one thing that is actually delayed gratification that is going to benefit your future self. Literally, you can grab a notebook or your planner or anything like that and just write down one goal for today that you're going to do. Maybe it's going for a run, maybe it's exercising, maybe it's writing the first page of a book you've been planning to do. Just do something that actually benefits your future self, because one thing that I haven't mentioned yet is if all you do, right, is sign bad contracts with your future self, all you do is instant gratification, you're just punishing your future self, what actually happens is you are constantly going to look back on yourself in the past with a sense of anger and a sense of frustration that, you know, that piece of shit, which was you in the past, didn't actually do anything to make your life any better. And I think that's I think that's actually maybe the biggest reason why people have such low self-esteem these days, because that's all they do. I think 99% of problems mentally are just the product of the life you live. And I think because that's literally all most people do, that's why they have low self-esteem, and they don't have any sort of gratitude towards themselves. But when you start delaying gratification and you actually start working to make your future self's life better, you're constantly going to look back at past you with a sense of gratitude, because past you actually cared about future you and he actually, you know, did things that are going to improve your life. So just a quick video on that, guys. But if you are feeling burnout or anything like that, odds are it probably isn't burnout. Maybe it is if you know like nose to the grindstone. Maybe you do need to take a break. But I think for most people who aren't actually doing that much, they're not working 100 hours a week in some slave camp, you're really not burnt out. It's just because you haven't actually done anything that's going to benefit your future self. You're not working on your purpose, you're not working on goals or anything like that. If working on purpose and goals is something that interests you, I've got my ebook linked in the description below. I talk about all that stuff, many chapters. You can actually see all the things I talk about that if you click on the link below. But guys, that is the video. Thank you for watching, and don't let them win.